Emma Walsh clutched her worn leather bag closer to her body as she navigated through the maze of cubicles in the towering headquarters of Meridian Enterprises. 6 months into her job as an administrative assistant, she still felt like an imposter in the gleaming glass building. Her navy blue thrift store blazer and sensible shoes stood in stark contrast to the designer outfits that surrounded her. At 25, Emma was barely making ends meet, supporting herself and helping with her mother's mounting medical bills while trying to finish her business degree at night school. "Morning, Emma," called Diane from reception, her perfectly manicured nails tapping away at her keyboard. "Mr. Harrison wants those quarterly reports on his desk before the board meeting at 11. Emma nodded, suppressing a yawn. She had been up until 2 a.m. completing an assignment, and her fatigue clung to her like a second skin. Still, she managed to smile. "Already on it. I just need to grab something from my desk first." Her tiny workspace was tucked away in a corner of the executive floor, strategically positioned to be at the beck and call of upper management. As she settled into her chair, Emma reached into her bag for her most precious possession, a worn burgundy leather-bound diary her father had given her before he passed away 5 years ago. Her heart skipped a beat when her fingers met empty space where the diary should have been. "No, no, no," she whispered, dumping the contents of her bag onto her desk. Keys, wallet, phone, lipstick, and crumpled receipts tumbled out, but no diary. A cold panic washed over her as she tried to retrace her steps from the previous day. The diary contained everything: her deepest thoughts, her dreams, her fears, and most dangerously, her unfiltered observations about Meridian Enterprises and its intimidating CEO, Alexander Harrison, the very man who could fire her with a single word if he ever discovered what she had written about him and the company. "Looking for something?" The deep voice from behind made Emma jump. She whirled around to find Marcus Chen, the company's marketing director, and one of the few friendly faces among the executives, leaning against her cubicle wall. "My diary," Emma admitted, her voice tight with worry. "I can't find it anywhere. I must have left it here yesterday." Marcus's expression softened. "I'll keep an eye out. When did you last have it?" Emma thought back to the previous afternoon. "I was making notes during the staff meeting in the main conference room. Then I had to rush to catch my evening class," she groaned. "It could be anywhere." "We'll find it," Marcus assured her, but the concern in his eyes mirrored her own. They both knew that in the cutthroat environment of Meridian, personal vulnerabilities were often exploited without mercy. Throughout the morning, Emma went through the motions of her job while discreetly searching every corner of the office. By lunchtime, desperation had set in. The diary wasn't just a collection of private thoughts. It was her last connection to her father, filled with conversations she continued to have with him long after he was gone. "Any luck?" Marcus asked, finding her rifling through the lost and found box in the break room. Emma shook her head, blinking back tears. "Nothing. I've looked everywhere." "Not everywhere," Marcus said quietly, nodding toward the executive wing. "Have you checked the conference room?" The main conference room was off limits except during meetings. It was where the board gathered, where million-dollar decisions were made, and where Alexander Harrison often worked alone when he wanted privacy. "I can't just walk in there," Emma whispered. "You can if you're delivering these," Marcus replied, handing her a stack of reports. "Harrison requested these 10 minutes ago. Perfect excuse to take a look around." With a grateful nod, Emma took the reports and made her way to the conference room, her heart hammering against her ribs. The door was slightly ajar, and she could see the imposing silhouette of Alexander Harrison standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to the door. Emma took a deep breath and knocked softly. "Mr. Harrison, I have those reports you requested." He turned, and Emma was once again struck by his commanding presence. At 42, Alexander Harrison had built Meridian from a struggling startup to a corporate giant. His dark hair was just beginning to silver at the temples, and his piercing blue eyes seemed to cut through pretense and falsehood with laser precision. He was known for his brilliant mind, his uncompromising standards, and his complete lack of patience for incompetence. "Leave them on the table," he said dismissively, already turning back to the window. Emma placed the reports down and quickly scanned the room, her heart sinking when she saw no sign of her diary. As she turned to leave, her eyes caught a glimpse of burgundy leather on Harrison's desk, partially covered by a folder. Her diary. She froze, torn between the desperate need to reclaim her private thoughts and the fear of drawing attention to it. If he hadn't opened it yet, she might be able to slip away with it unnoticed. But if he had, is there something else, Ms. Walsh? Harrison asked, turning back to face her with a raised eyebrow. No, sir, thank you, sir, Emma stammered, backing toward the door. She would have to find another way to retrieve it. Outside in the hallway, Emma leaned against the wall, trying to calm her racing heart. He has it, she whispered to Marcus when she returned to her desk. It's on his desk. Marcus winced. Did he seem different, like he might have read it? I couldn't tell, Emma replied, the knot in her stomach tightening. What am I going to do? That diary has everything in it, including what I really think about the company's treatment of junior staff, the questionable deal with Westridge Industries, and... She lowered her voice to a whisper. What I wrote about him. What exactly did you write about Harrison? Marcus asked, his expression grave. Emma closed her eyes, remembering the words she had penned just days ago. I wrote that beneath his cold exterior, I believed there was a man trapped by expectations and past wounds. That sometimes, when he thinks no one is watching, I catch glimpses of profound loneliness in his eyes. And I wrote about the dream I had, where he and I... She couldn't finish the sentence, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. You need to get that diary back, Marcus said firmly. Today. For the rest of the afternoon, Emma watched Harrison's office like a hawk, waiting for an opportunity. At 5:30 p.m., she saw him leave for a meeting on another floor. This was her chance. With a silent prayer, Emma slipped into his office and approached his desk. The diary was gone. Panic rising, she carefully lifted papers and folders, searching desperately, looking for this. The voice from the doorway made her blood run cold. Alexander Harrison stood there, her burgundy diary in his hand, his expression unreadable. Mr. Harrison, I can explain, Emma began, but he cut her off with a raised hand. I believe this belongs to you, he said, walking toward her. I found it in the conference room yesterday evening. Emma reached for the diary, relief washing over her. But Harrison didn't release it immediately. The last entry, he said quietly, his eyes holding hers. The last line. Emma's heart stopped. The last line she had written just yesterday morning. If only he knew that behind his empire of glass and steel, I can see the man he truly is. And that man is the one I'm falling in love with. Harrison's hand trembled slightly as he released the diary to her, his composed facade cracking just enough for Emma to see something she had never witnessed before. Vulnerability. My office, 8 a.m. tomorrow, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We have much to discuss, Ms. Walsh. As Emma clutched the diary to her chest and hurried from his office, she couldn't decide whether she had just saved her job or lost it entirely. But one thing was certain. Tomorrow would change everything. Emma barely slept that night. Her tiny apartment, usually a sanctuary from the corporate world, felt like a prison of anxiety as she paced the worn hardwood floors. She had reread her diary entries a dozen times, cringing at her candid observations about Alexander Harrison. While she hadn't written anything malicious, she had been brutally honest about her perceptions of him, his defense mechanisms, the sadness she sometimes glimpsed beneath his stern exterior, and most mortifyingly, her growing feelings for him. This is professional suicide, she muttered to herself as she prepared for work the next morning, choosing her most professional outfit, a charcoal pencil skirt and white blouse that had seen better days. Her roommate Zoe watched from the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand. Maybe it's not as bad as you think, Zoe offered. You said he just asked for a meeting, right? He didn't fire you on the spot. That's probably because firing me would require paperwork, and Harrison hates inefficiency, Emma replied, attempting a weak joke. She checked her watch, 7:15 a.m. I should go. If I'm going to face my execution, I might as well be punctual. The morning commute passed in a blur. Emma arrived at Meridian's headquarters at 7:45, surprised to find the normally bustling building quiet, with only security and a few early risers present. As she rode the elevator to the executive floor, her diary safely tucked in her bag, Emma rehearsed what she would say. An apology, an explanation, or should she simply accept whatever consequences came her way with dignity? The executive floor was eerily silent. Emma walked slowly to Harrison's office, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. His door was closed, but a soft light shone from underneath. Taking a deep breath, Emma knocked. Come in, came the familiar voice, lacking its usual commanding tone. Emma entered to find Alexander Harrison not behind his imposing desk, but standing by the window, a cup of coffee in hand. He was dressed impeccably as always in a tailored charcoal suit, but there was something different about him this morning, a hesitancy in his posture perhaps, or a softness around his eyes that she had never noticed before. "Ms. Walsh," he said, gesturing to a seating area in the corner of his office rather than the intimidating chairs facing his desk. "Please, sit down." Emma perched on the edge of a leather armchair, her back straight, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Harrison took the seat across from her, setting his coffee on the small table between them. "I imagine you didn't sleep well last night," he began, surprising her with his perceptiveness. "No, sir," Emma admitted, seeing no point in pretense. Harrison nodded, his eyes studying her face. "Neither did I." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "Your diary. I want to apologize for reading it. I found it after hours, and I opened it looking for identification of its owner. Once I realized it was personal, I should have closed it immediately." "But you didn't," Emma said